Welcome back to the Garage Mind, everybody. Tonight, I have Arky Jones with me. So, Arky, how you doing, man?
Yeah, good. I'm excited to be here. Thanks, Tony.
Nice to finally meet you, man. Nice to sit down and talk with you. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself for everybody listening?
Oh, absolutely. So, look, my journey's been pretty interesting one in that I started uh, fundamentally a complete change in my life 20 plus years ago when my babies were born. And it was kind of one from like a transition from like, okay, let's go out every weekend and just get smashed to how can I improve my life in ways that are meaningful. So like bring people up around me, and how can I refocus towards this? And it's a journey. It was a journey with ups and downs up until about 14 years ago. I discovered writing and started writing avidly, but I could never, even though I could finish the books for me, I never brought myself to kind of publishing them or pushing it forward. Anyway, roll back about 10 years ago, I started to publish books, and fundamentally started off as short stories and expanded them out. But in all that writing, I discovered that there was common traits in characters. There was common things in with different characters I wrote, and in a lot of the reason I looked over there is I've got a stack of my books. There is in some of the short stories I wrote, I rewrote classics like Brothers Grimm, and rewrote them all in modern ways. But in each trope, in each story was personalities that were shining through. And then, of course, I've got a day job as well. I'm not that good of a writer, I'll be honest. so I've got a day job as well, and and I was learning how to get on with other people in work. And not only that, you know that no matter how hard you try, there are certain people, and they don't have to be malicious or vicious or in any way, shape, or form unpleasant, but you just cannot get along with them. And it bothered me, because then I was like, then that's when I come into the areas of, all right, what is actually within my control, what's not? And then I realized one thing that was within my control, and as someone that is an avid investigator, an avid writer, was to understand maybe different personalities better. And I basically, so who am I? I'm someone who realized that the way that we interface with the world, so the spoken word, so not the thoughts, we can't control these, but the things that come out of our mouth, the things we can control, I realized that that is something that we can map. And then we can use that interface, how we deal with the world, and then set about up until for about 10 years up until now, which I've recently basically published a large platform on personality that's still growing.
Yeah.
Brought that into the world. So fundamentally, I'm someone who is absolutely fascinated by personality, but because it is the way we interface with the world, not in some kind of way that is highly theoretical, more that how can we practically apply that to make our lives very, very slightly better in increments.
I like what you're saying there too. And what, gravitated me towards you is that's kind of like where I'm at in my life. Whether everybody's got their own story, they've been through things, but that thought of, you said earlier of, there's just that one person that you can't get past and you don't know why. Is it me? Is it them? Is it, because you can't control the thoughts. Absolutely. And I'm just kind of like at a point in my life. I like how you have pinpointed that, and you can recognize that everybody has personality traits, and some might not be very different. And how do you harness that? Like, what are some things that you tell people, like, because everybody looks at everything very differently. Not you or I will see things the same. That's whether it is about younger stuff like that. But how do you pinpoint the different traits and how they react differently with different people?
Yeah. So, firstly, what you said and what I've alluded to earlier is that, firstly, by accepting what you can control and then accepting what you cannot. It's a great foundation. So we've established that as a baseline, which is really, really important. Now, how do you actually do it? So in many ways, if you if you think about what is the biggest commodity in the world, the biggest asset that humans have, and the biggest thing that is farmed regularly, it is attention. And so, how I see attention is as a gift. So, if someone is giving me their attention, for one, I try to use my default position now would be to feel humbled that someone has chose to give me their attention. Now, I'm not saying if someone is swearing at you or if someone is, I'm not humbled then, but I'm saying that
No.
in the main, in most interactions we have, I try to see attention as a gift. And so by doing so, I then think to myself, okay, so given the thing that I can control is me, I can control my actions, my consequences. How do I get the most from this conversation? And so, therefore, let me give you a real world example. And this is an upbeat one, and then we'll talk a little bit more about conflict side of things. But
Yeah.
in an upbeat example, so once as I did this study, I realized that one of my absolute superpowers was I can see patterns very, very quickly. So, for example, in a room, I would often someone would say something, and I could finish the sentence before they had. I could my idea would be 70%, 80% of the time, my idea that I had initially, the room might arrive at 45 minutes later. And so sometimes that would frustrate me, or sometimes I would be like, or I would just be very quick in with the answer and be like, okay, can we move on? And what I realized is that there was still, and I'm not trying to big note myself. It's generally about 75%. We ended up where I'd arrived at, but there was
Yeah.
25% of the time where it didn't. And so what I started doing as I got to know myself better was, instead of being the first to speak, I would be the last to speak. And as more information became available to me from the room, the idea itself within those few minutes matured into with new ideas compounded with new pattern recognition that made the original idea more solid. And it didn't mean we always settled on my idea, but it meant that what we settled on generally was the best idea overall. And as the new information became available, I was able to make those decisions stronger. So what I'm saying is that one of the key works with mine, and just trying to answer the question a little bit there, is that even your absolute strengths, even your best traits can cast a shadow, and shining a light on those shadows can actually give you more valuable outcomes in the end. And then on the other side of it is like the shadows might be like a bit more anxiety over things that you like that's outside your control, overthinking. And this is one thing that many people face, is that, let's say that, I don't know, Tony, with you, but mate, let's say that someone that has influence over your life says
Absolutely.
something. Do you ever think like afterwards, like this, or maybe you have at any point? Yeah.
I
So
struggled with that for a long time. Yeah.
no, it's very human and very understandable, and I understand the feeling as well. And the reason it's fascinating is that we've just said that attention is the most valuable resource that we have while we're alive, because where we put our attention is the direction we go. And so when we are putting our attention into things that are uncontrollables, so let's say for example that you've got a big meeting tomorrow, and then this person has influence over you,
Yeah.
but you're unsure of direction. Of course, it is proper to prepare. It is proper to be ready to go, but it is not proper to predict 1,000 different possible outcomes, all of them which from you lose your job or you lose the opportunity, right through to somehow they've found out a top secret about you that doesn't really exist, and you're going to end up in jail on the moon. you know, do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And it will get there if you let it. Yeah. Yep.
and when it gets to the extremes, it's like, okay, what the hell am I doing? They just want to talk about a new additive to the fuel. Do you know what I
Yep.
mean? That's
Nothing what you were thinking in your head.
it.
And I like what you're talking about right now too with the because I feel like I still, it's something I struggle with too. Where you overthinking, I feel like a lot of us think like, am I, even with the insecurities, like, am I good enough? Am I doing enough? And you know, being able to hone in on that, I love that you can do that and you can notice that and recognize that. And I believe that is a superpower as well too. That you can do that because coming from a person who overthinks everything, that's something I struggle with, but have been trying to lock it down. I think that is your superpower. That absolutely is your superpower. And I just want to go back really quick to something you said that I really like. That if somebody's paying attention to you, that's everything. If somebody gives you a minute, because that means they're solely into listening to what you're saying and hearing you out. I like that. That's a good. I never looked at listening as something that was a valuable.
Well, one thing, mate, that bothers me a lot in the modern world, and it's actually something that a value I have tried to bestow upon my children, and I've tried to bestow it upon them in a way that they can see the merits in it. So, firstly, let me give you this scenario, okay? So, we're all told, we all see the wins, don't we, on social media? We all get the small dopamine hits. We all
Yep.
have the feed that shows the guy with the Lamborghini, the guy with the
A lot of that.
the big house. Yeah, we see that, and we see people saying that, like, your intelligence or your ability to get things done quickly is like what's going to make you win. And we try to pretend that these people of the highest intelligence, whatever that means, are
Yeah.
these superstars. Yeah. So what actually, if you look back, and I've just set the scene, but I'll give you a little story now. So Charles Darwin, the founder of this so-called, evolutionary theory, whatever we think about it, Darwin. So Darwin himself, yeah, he spent 8 years looking at mollusks. That was it. Just every day sitting down in a laboratory looking at mollusks. He didn't sit there one day and just have this ingenious idea that we are evolved from lesser creatures or cellular kind of primordial soup and all that. Just no. He looked at mollusks for 8 years. And I'll be honest, what is not spoken of in the modern world, and this is something from my personality studies that it mapped onto this, which was just the more research I did, the more it made sense, is that our tolerance for boredom is one of the best predictors of how well you will do. Because our attention has been hijacked in the modern world. And
Hmm.
when you look at guys that have made it, very few have done so in one bold sweep. They've done so from hundreds and hundreds of thousands of hours and a high tolerance for boredom. So the point to this is Darwin spent 8 years looking at mollusks before he was able to make a conclusion. And today's kids and young adults are
Yeah.
told they need to spend 5 minutes and then move on.
I love that too. I did not know that too. Thank you for that knowledge. And I think you're right too. I feel now with social media getting so big, we have it right in our hands with phones that we're not. That's kind of why I did the show too, because I love what we're doing here. The real conversation, real people, you know, deep dives into we and I get stuck too. I'm a victim of it. I look on my phone, you look at shorts and you keep going, and then all of a sudden you realize hours have gone by. You were not present at all, and I feel like that's a lot. That's why I'm doing this too, and that's why I'm talking to people that are passionate like you, and can notice these things and can see that the real conversations, and you need to recognize the real patterns that are going on in life as well still, and just because that's what it's about. It's not about sitting, wasting your time. Life is short. You know, maximize it, engage with it, and have fun. Not just sitting on our phones and paying attention to screens.
So let's just use the metaphorical devil for a minute as a bit
Okay,
of as a bit of an oversight. Just in the metaphor, I'm not talking in any particular sense. It's just everyone knows what that word means.
absolutely.
So this is how the devil fools you, and it is by garnishing your attention onto things that are unproductive. Now let's be absolutely clear here. Resting and relaxation can be productive when it's well earned. but unearned relaxation where your attention and your mind is just switched off and you are being told what to think. You are a passenger in your own life. And as soon as you become a passenger, what have you lost? You've lost
Oh,
control. As soon as you lose control, you are then dictated you who you are, who your personality is, how you interface with the world through external validation. So something that is here is telling you what to think, who you are, where you are. And the problem with that is you never get to know yourself. And there is I think there's a song that says when the music stops, but the truth is when the music does stop, that is the time when you must reflect. But if you never ever allow the music to stop, if you allow this dopaminergic system to continue to be stimulated no matter what, then you are not reflecting, you're not moving forward. You also are not truly in charge because something's telling you where to put that attention and to keep going. And in one of my books I wrote years ago called Don't Give Two S Words, was I actually researched this quite heavily and I called the section, I won't name it just because we're on a podcast, but it's an illicit drug and
okay.
slot machines. Slot machines are the ones that yep.
Yeah.
And the feed is using the same techniques that those two things use. They hijack the same system to keep us online, to keep us going. And of course, in the moment, it feels good. But it, again, eventually it will stop. The music stops. And that is the question I always ask people, is that in the light, in the darkness of the night, when you're alone in bed and the thoughts around your head are ruminating over and over and over again, is there something that you can do about them? And if there is, do it. But most of the time, it's just thoughts, or I should have done this, could have done this, would have done
Yeah.
this. Shoulda, coulda, woulda is a fool's use of your attention. But it often happens when your attention's being hijacked elsewhere because all the shoulda, coulda, wouldas you could have been doing, but you chose not to. And like you setting up this podcast and you putting your attention into this and you putting something into growth, you can see that growth trajectory, and you will often. And I don't mean to speak for you, but I'm just
Oh,
speaking
you're
in
fine.
general for people that are acting out. Is that you would by having a direction, by having a way forward, probably most often when you go to bed, the only things you would think about is maybe, oh, I probably could have articulated that point a bit better. And
Yep.
then, okay, next time, yeah, I'm going to reword it this way. And then when the opportunity comes up, you're ready for it. It's a growth thing. Whereas if you'd have spent this hour just doom scrolling, there's no growth in that whatsoever. And the reason I keep coming back to doom scrolling is it is probably the most efficient, most short-term pleasurable waste of time that the humans have ever invented. And so it's just so relevant. And where this pulls back into personality is that, unfortunately, unless you're willing to actually shine a light on the areas of your where you could do better, you can stay in these cycles, you can stay trapped because it feels warm, it feels comfortable, it feels familiar.
So you talked about something earlier about earned sleep. I like that because a lot of people feel, myself as well, if I'm taking a nap or I'm or whatever, if it's not earned, I always feel it's not earned, and that's not the right way to think of things either. If you worked hard, you dedicated your day, whatever it may be, you deserve that sleep. You're not being lazy, you're not wasting your time. Wasting your time is doom scrolling. And I love that word as well because this is also kind of why I started this. I noticed I was doing that a lot. I got comfortable in my job. I got complacent, and that's never been the person that I am. Um, and I realized, while doom scrolling actually, that there's so much more to people and there's so much more to life that I don't even know about. And why did I get to an age where I'm just okay with looking at my phone and not learning anymore, not staying curious. I've always been a curious person. And I love and I believe that you're guiding people to that. And I like that.
You've actually made a really interesting point there. And one other thing that with sleep, and this is something that I absolutely recommend everybody works towards. And this is moving a little tiny bit away from personality and more into the deeper self. But the your dreams are direct consequences of your day's events. And for me, what I've learned to look forward to is I've looked forward to dreams. And I actually embrace dreams as part of my life. And I see dreaming no longer separate from waking in terms of opportunity for me to become my best self. And I'll tell you, there's a few ways where this came, but the primary one was, and it came to me in a dream that ghosts, so ghosts like woo
Yeah.
are real. They are real, but we've forgotten what ghosts are in the modern world. We've forgotten the message of our ancestors. And in this dream, I realized that we are haunted, but we're haunted by our past. We're haunted from trauma from our childhood. We're haunted from negative events. We're haunted from outcomes that have been challenging, that were never reconciled. And in this dream, it was these memories. They would come, but they would come as apparitions. And I guess you might say to me, well, you're just giving me the story of what is it, the Christmas Ebenezer Scrooge. You know what I
Oh
mean? The
yeah,
Christmas
yeah.
Carol, Christmas Carol, and
Yes,
and
yeah.
maybe I am. Maybe I am, but I saw it, in my own way. And the truth is that, like, in embracing the dream, in looking for meaning, it was because my attention had been put towards this that the answer came. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that this isn't about the dreams. This is about embracing sleep, not only as essential, but as part of being human. And I think it's been forgotten in the modern world. I'm gonna go off on a tangent here, Tony, but
You're good.
I bloody hate it. This toxic positivity where they're like, sleep at 1 a.m. and get up at 4 a.m. and be productive the whole day. It's like, what the hell are you doing? And that is not living. That's not the full experience. And to be human is to sleep. Therefore, if you can learn to adore sleep, that I actually then direct my final thoughts before I sleep into what I want to dream about. And when I'm really, really, really lucky, I get to watch the best movie of my life in those few moments. Yeah, in that dream.
Yep, and
But
that
I'm
dream
I'm
state.
quite lucky. I dream most nights. I'm quite lucky, so I feel blessed. Um, Now back to the previous point about human, and so when we talk about attention, now what we have to remember is that the universe is 97% dark matter. And nobody knows what the hell dark matter is.
Yeah,
Nobody. They just say dark matter, dark energy, blah 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 blah. They talk about this kind of quarks and quantum physics and blah 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 blah. I have no idea. But what I do know is that let's just for this podcast, let's say the Big Bang existed, okay? Because we can go multiverse, we can go God, we can go whatever we want. But for this
absolutely.
particular podcast, we're going to say the Big Bang is what happened because nobody knows. And people pretend to know and they make money off pretend to know, but nobody knows. So before the Big Bang, there was infinite potential. If you think about everything that exists, it's because of that moment. So something has always existed before that. And that is infinite potential for good, infinite potential for evil. But it all existed pre this because everything we can see is because of that. And what did it do? Where did it bring life? Well, let there be light. It brought life where there is light because the rest is dark. It's dark matter. There's as far as we know, it's the vacuum of space. There's something there, but we don't know what. But it's certainly not life as we know it, as maybe a Star Trek fan would say. But the idea is then so light, and so light. Let that be a trick to anyone listening that where you put your attention is where you cast your light. And it is up to you to cast a light in the way you want to walk when you're in a dark
Absolutely.
hall. But it's always good to have a quick look behind you, but look at the self as well. And so by putting the light onto yourself, you're doing something that was designed at the very, very, very beginnings of time, when the sun first cast light on the earth and blah, 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 blah. It's the same thing. And I saw this the other day. I can't remember. I think it was on a podcast, but it fascinated me. Like they map neurons
Yeah,
against the universe, the
I've seen
universe,
that.
and yeah, and
Crazy.
it's things like that where if you stop just for a moment, you can have a deep gratitude for where you put your attention. And I think that for me, Tony, sorry, is one of the key things is understanding that we are built of with the same capacity that created the universe in the
Yep.
first place, and then using that what we've got to shine a light on the direction we want to go in, and seeing that as a bigger picture, because it's a pattern throughout the universe. Does that
No, I,
make
I, I
sense?
totally get that. And dude, you're giving me goosebumps. I agree with your perspective on things too. And I did see the same thing. They were saying the way that our neurons and our nervous system and all that's mapped out is the same as the universe, the same as the stars and the planets and the way that it looks. They actually put it side by side and it was the same, like you couldn't tell the difference. So to the thought of that we're part of the universe as well and we're made of the same stuff, I love that because I 100% agree with that. And people will say, yeah, whatever, you're just saying that. But think about it. Have you ever casted something out there in the universe and it happens? That's happened to me plenty of times. I put my mind somewhere, whether, I did martial arts for, MMA for probably 15, 20 years. And whenever I use this example all the time, I'd get ready for a fight. I'd see myself winning it. I'd see my hand raised. I'd see I didn't know how, but I saw it. And like you said, I put my vision to that and I put it into the universe and it would happen. The days I was off and it didn't happen, it wouldn't. And to say that too, then there's the naysayers that will say, "Well, I'll just think of the life that I want." No, but you have to put everything into it. Your energy, your focus, you have to, and it will come to you. It absolutely will. Maybe not the way you thought it will, but it will absolutely. And I love the way you have a really good way of architect. How do you say it? Like saying it and putting it to where people can see it. And I love that. I'm listening to you, and I'm sometimes it's hard for me to put things into words, but the way you're saying it is exactly the way I'm visualizing it, and I love it.
So just on the prayer note, on the intention note, intention setting prayer, whatever you want to call it, I will say this, and I say this with the most honesty that I'm capable of speaking, knowing that the limitations of my human fallibility to failure.
Mhm.
So when I say this, I mean it to be true. The I have never not had a prayer answered ever. My prayers have always come true, but I have never asked for anything for me. It is always selfless, and it is always aimed at bringing things up around me. And it always involves me working very hard to make it happen. And even when it's not been answered in the way that I perceived, it always gave me what I needed. And so
Sure.
there, yeah. So therefore, I also do believe that it is beyond our comprehension, the full kind of the full richness of prayer or where we, intention setting. Now, interestingly, what you mentioned earlier about, people say, well, I asked for a new car, or I asked for a 1,000-acre farm that on fertile land with quality bulls. And,
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
It's
best of
not what it's
everything.
about. Yep. I
Even
like that.
farmers don't have all of those things, but
Yep.
that's what you asked for.
Yep.
And the thing is that let's just pull it back. So we live in a physical world with physical realities. And so therefore is even which I do firmly believe that all our consciousness exists shared. I believe that we have a soul that is sovereign to the individual, and I believe consciousness, personality is something that is a shared resource, and
Part of it.
personality is the interface that we have with the world. So I see them completely separately. I also think, and you would have heard this argument before, and I hate to rehash arguments, so I won't
No,
stay
you're
on
good.
it. I like to try and keep it new and fresh. But
Mhm.
the idea of the idea of ideas, and I guarantee you, Tony, when you thought about making this podcast and you've now manifested this into reality. And I'm using this as a very straightforward example because it's something we can
Yeah.
see right now. But that idea didn't come to you from you; it came from elsewhere, and that is where ideas can be manifested because you've actioned it, or ideas can die. And most ideas we have, we don't action. I mean, let's just talk about a very silly one that most guys and probably a lot of girls can relate to. But sometimes when let's just do a quick story. Okay,
Yeah.
so you've
Yeah.
got the the office manager comes in, and let's say that let's go let's go one more than the manager, let's go the one below the owner, so they have a lot of authority, they can hire you, they can fire you, and let's say that you need this income from this job because as we just mentioned a minute ago, there's physical realities in the world. We have to eat, we have to have
Yep.
shelter, all these basic things. So you've been asked to photocopy and laminate a bit of paper, yeah,
Yep.
and you've been asked to do it 1,000 times, and you say to this manager, excuse me, sir, or however you're going to address him, in a polite, respectful way. I was just wondering, is there a machine that laminates and prints at the same time? Because this takes 4 minutes, this takes 2 minutes. If we combined it, we're saving 2 minutes, over 10,000. That's a lot of time saved.
Absolutely.
And reasonable question. The guy's young. Let's say I was 22, 21, 22, and you ask that question, and he goes like, looks at the people around him, his audience. Maybe they're like 25-year-old ladies and a young guy who's overly enthusiastic, and he looks at them and he's like, "Yeah, you're the machine." And yeah, and so there's a bit of a joke here because you would never act on this, but one of your first thoughts might be, you would look prettier without teeth. That would be one. But you're never going to act on that. But that would be a thought. So thoughts are just thoughts.
Yeah.
You don't act on it. So, but then there's part of you that could be slighted, and you could take this as an insult, which it clearly is. The guy is clearly a tool. Or you could do nothing and be you just be passive in the abuse and in the disrespect. You can be passive and nothing happens, and you might mutter about it at home. Or you could update your operating system that this guy is a total idiot. You could never ask them a question again unless it hinged your employment. You could slow down the work that you do to be as efficient as you can get, as minimally efficient as you can get away with, and you could start looking for another job. So the third or the fourth option or 100th option, because we have a million thoughts,
Yeah.
if you can settle on something like that, that is a growth opportunity. And so even in those slights, you can find wins. And that's upgrade. That's about you and your personality and how you take that information. And as I've got older, I always move to, what can I get from this? What can I upgrade? What knowledge can I take? Because I understand my variables and what I can control.
I like that, man, that thought of growth, because it's almost sort of like taking the high road. So I like that. So in that example, it perfect. You could punch his teeth, or you could stop and take the higher road and think, all right, maybe I've outgrown this job. I'm a little smarter than these guys. Let's get somewhere where I belong. And of course you go home, maybe talk about it, but giving the energy to the right thing is my thought. You give the energy to, now, okay, it's time to grow. Let's go somewhere else. Not, let's lose our job and get aggravated and attack this guy. I like that. That's and I think that's why, like I said earlier from the beginning of the podcast, you really know how, and you said it too, to hone in on characteristics and things that will help you grow. And that's one that I wasn't even really sure where it was going in the beginning. And then I was like, I had the epiphany. Wow. Yes, absolutely. Take everything for growth, not, just fighting that guy or arguing would be a waste of time. It would just, he's still going to be the same person. You might lose your job. And like you said, a tool, and it's never going to change. So why waste your time there? It's about you growing, not wasting your time. I like that.
So if you take, this is one thing that, like I mentioned earlier, I like writing, but let's forget that if you like writing or not, okay. If you take self authorship of your story, so you write your own story, and then therefore you take ownership of your own story, there's two things that are happening there. Is you realize that you are playing a game, and life is a game, but it is a game for keeps with real stakes. So if I'm playing a game for keeps, I want as many cheat codes as I can possibly get on my side, because every decision matters. And one of the biggest cheat codes in life is that speak only when necessary. Now, I am not talking, Tony, when you're with your boys having a beer,
Yeah.
playing darts, and you ban, because there is a saying, and it is there's two. I'm going to give two. One is, there is a time for peace and there is a time for war. And that is something that is it was as true as the dawn of humankind as it is today. And there is a second one. If you sow the wind, you reap the whirlwind. And you would have known that, because many of your adversaries in MMA would have reaped your whirlwind. But that whirlwind wasn't made in the battlefield. That whirlwind was made in your thousands of hours of pain that you were willing to go through to get where you wanted to be. And so what I'm trying to say is, but if Tony, you did what you reap what you sow. If you had reaped, I'm just going to eat Doritos and with dipped cheese and not train, you probably would have got your bottom kicked.
Yep.
Fair?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Absolutely.
And so what this means is just what this actually means is that in all these acts, in all these doings, in this authorship and ownership, the things that you can absolutely dedicate your life to are things that should give you the most satisfaction. Because in any given moment, like right now, and this is a difficult concept, but in right now, the only thing that truly exists for me is you. And that's not saying I've not got a family. It's just this is all
Yeah.
we have.
This
And
is where we are.
this is where we are. And this is where our attention is. And up until now, the totality of my life, and everything has brought me in this direction. But the future is not yet written. And this is one thing I want people to understand. And this is just a little bit more humbling, but in any given moment, you can absolutely blow your life up. You could ruin it through the spoken word. And so that is why one of the biggest things for me with the personality studies is, and acknowledging for me that personality is the interface with the world, is if people understand the power of word, and the old saying, the pen is mightier than the sword. Do you know, when I was a kid,
Yep.
I used to think it was because if you stab someone with the pen, they'd get ink poisoning and then die a slow and lonely death later on. But of
Hey,
course it.
it's
Of
not
course
far
it
off.
doesn't. Me and my cousin would walk around with these pens that we used to
Oh,
get from Argos, which is like a shop where you used to have to write what you wanted.
yeah.
Anyway, you get the point. And then with the pencil, we were like lead poisoning, but yeah, we were kids, so shit happens.
I like that
Anyway,
thought.
what it actually means though is that yes, of course, you can brute force anything
Mhm. Easily.
to a point until three guys come back and brute force you. It is not a way. It is not a way to win. What is a way to win in life is to be mindful about the words you choose and direct them in a way that not only brings you up, but the same way a rising tide raises all ships. The words you speak try to raise you and those around you, remembering that you cannot control the others. And if one of the ships decides to break harbor and drive into rocks, so be it, because you can't do that. But you, through your actions, are trying to
Control
bring
that.
others up with you. And what I've found is that when you can refocus your attention in that way, is no matter the storm, you've built a port that can secure the ships. And then when the sun comes, others, and if others around you, if you surround yourself with people who are also what I say this is, of course, we're all different. And I'm not saying you surround yourself with the same people, but if you build your life around people that you trust, you respect, you have loyalty to, this is the totality of human history. And that is worth fighting for. If
Yep.
you build it by people who stab you in the back, who are not loyal, who lie, who, then that is the direction you're going to go in. Because again, as we said at the very beginning, we're going to look at them, we're going to work with them, things are going to go bad. We're going to work with these people who have our best interests in heart the same way as we do. It's not always smooth. It's not always smooth, but it is always, that whatever happens is because at that time you did the best you could, not the worst you could.
Sitting here from listening to you right now too, as well, and listening to everything you said, um, Arky, man, you're good at what you do because the thoughts in my head right now are I'm in control of my life more than I've ever known. From the words that I speak and from where I place my thoughts and man, you're blowing my mind right now with this information because and I love you have a very I love talking to people more and more people that I talk to. I keep finding myself, you talked about gravitating and keeping your focus and I knew what I wanted to do with this podcast, but now every time I talk to somebody and it gets better and better and better, and you're one of the top people right now I'm honing in on what I want and like you're the epitome of it, brother. You're you know where you want to go. You're passionate, you're driven, you're focused. And those are the stories, those are the people that I want to hear from. And the more that I keep doing this, I'm getting there. And as you're talking about focus and you're talking about, being in control, I'm seeing this podcast manifest into absolutely what I was looking for. And you're the first person to make me realize that because when I'm talking to you, I'm getting goosebumps. I got here like you're so passionate on what you do and focus that's exactly the heart of the stories that my listeners want and that I want. The curious, the passionate, the driven, I love it. You can tell. And, I'm glad there's people like you doing the self-motivation, the growth, because man, I don't know anyone who has it more honed than you do. And I love every aspect of life that you have said. I agree. And I wasn't sure about where some of them were going. And then the more I listen, I'm like, man, he's right. He's absolutely right. And just from what we've been talking for a little bit now, I feel I'm ready to take more control of my life. Absolutely. And that's just from 30, 40 minutes of talking to you, brother. Man, man, if you got anything else, I'd love to hear it because this is great.
No, absolutely. Firstly, I will say that when I saw the podcast title that you had, Garage Mind, it elicited in me so many memories because a lot of my philosophy, because I don't drink often, but I do like to have a beer now and again with a few guys and play a bit of poker. And in summer, we play in the back garden. In winter, we play in the garage. And in many times we've philosophized, particularly for a few beers, philosophized in the garage, and Garage Mind came to mind. It doesn't have to be with beers because you could be working on your car. Like my son's currently got a stripped down Toyota that he's putting a body kit on for a competition in Japanese motors coming up in September. But it's not the point. The Garage Mind is really good. But I will tell you something, Tony, that you've just said, and this has just come to me now. So elephants, okay. So elephants, they walk through the forest and they follow a path, an elephant trail, and they follow the same trail. But there was always the first elephant that broke through, took the pain, took the hits from the sticks. They forged the original path. And then the one that followed them, the first one that followed them, they would have took a bit of damage as well off the twigs and the sticks. But by the 10th, by the 20th elephant, it's just a path they always followed. And then 3 generations later, they're still using the same elephant trail, but nobody quite knows why. It's just the way they go. And so this is one thing where we have to be very, very careful of in life is, are the paths that we are walking the ones that we chose, or have they been chosen for us like the elephant? And what would happen halfway through that path if you took a glance to the left and all you can see is trees and monkeys and the reason I use monkeys is chaos
Yeah.
and unknowing. But you decide to go through that way. You decide you're going to make your own path. And so the elephants that make their own path, this is the thing, some of them die, but some of them find resources that are beyond they ever imagined. And their next generation is better than theirs. And
Better.
so when you are going through life, you must ask yourself, am I the elephant of the first generation, the second generation, or the 10th? And by the time you're the 10th generation, maybe it's time to find a new pattern, find a new way, find a new map,
Yep.
because otherwise you're just a passenger again. And I am not saying there is no value in following well-trodden paths, but there's certainly, unless you are going to try a new way, you're certainly going to repeat the same patterns.
I agree 100% to it. And, the older I get too, I have that same thought too. Obviously I'm religious too. So I follow the religious beliefs of, I grew up Catholic and stuff and that I agree, but I think some things differently. And then in life too, the thought is, am I just following, what my dad did, what my grandpa did, and which is fine too, if that's what, but to me, that's what I was talking about earlier. I don't want to just coast through life. There's another way. It doesn't have to be done that way. And I believe that's a society problem as well, too, especially being from the US. Times are changing a lot right now. And I think people are starting to notice that because we just, I'm proud from where I'm from, but everybody's been in this kind of, we're the best, we're this, that, we're that. But now things are coming to light and we're starting to see things that we may have not known, things that maybe some things we've done, and nobody's perfect. And I get that as well, too. And I'm not political. I'm not making that argument. But to your point, I think we get complacent, we get comfortable, and we kind of just stay, the path, the course. And there's nothing wrong with veering off that and taking your own path.
Well, that is where the metal hits the meat, and that is where your adventure begins. I want people to understand this. They are not necessarily to blame for where they are right now. And this is not making excuses. I'm going to explain it very clearly. We have a machine that has been polished for about 100 years of control of attention, control of thoughts. It tells us how to think. It tells us what we need. It tells us what to do. Not only that, we've also been told that we can seek validation, we can seek an end point in life in terms of if you get the new car, if you get the best clothes, if you get the new Nike shoes or whatever brand,
Yep.
if you, but all of it involves consuming and consumption. What that does is, let's break it down, okay? So there are people in this world that don't have enough food. I am sorry that is happening to you. I'm sorry that happens, but this is something that I don't know how to solve for you. It's terrible. But let's take most people that do have food, do have shelter, do have the basics of life met, because there's tragedies everywhere. Life is pain. And it's painful, and most of the totality of human history has been misery. So we're ahead of that, most of us. So with that being said, that your attention, then where you put it, these things are designed to tell you need things all the time, and when you get there, you will feel happy. But every time you get there, you might feel great for a day. As you get the new car, you might feel great for a couple of days. You might like this new Gucci handbag or whatever, but it wears off. And then you're like, what's next? In all honesty, it's normally within an hour. It's like,
You're
oh yeah,
always
okay, this is
chasing it.
great. Yeah, always chasing it. But do you know what they've done? They've then told you, and by they, what I mean is the societal pressures, the way it's set up. I don't mean any like guys around a table smoking
Yeah,
cigars. I
media
just
or
mean,
whatnot.
media, all that exactly. So what they've done is they've told you that there's an endpoint, which there's not. They've also misrepresented what money means for most of us working people, and money represents stored time. So we sacrifice our life energy, we get money, and then we use that money for living. Then when you take debt, and I'm not talking about for a house that you can afford in a safe neighborhood with good school. You know what I mean? This is stuff that
Yeah.
it is, whether we like it or not, we needed a cave near where we could have a fire
Yeah.
and the birds didn't eat us.
Necessities.
So
Yeah.
yeah, necessities. So once you've got that, once you have a car that works, because you need that to get to work, run people around and do the chores. Let's say you've got those two things. Then they're telling you, if you just get this new Range Rover with $120,000 debt, that will make you feel better, but you have a car that works. And what I'm trying to say is that there's a misrepresentation that things are more valuable than time, when in fact, if you can understand the most precious resource that you have is the attention, and then the time to put that attention in a direction where you want to go. And so for me, that was what I come back to the beginning of this, when I told you it's an absolute privilege when someone gives me their attention in a way that is constructive or in a way I can learn from, which is most situations, because they are giving me their time. And when it comes down to it, the alpha and the omega, the beginning and the end, we are born and then we die. And then memento mori, remember you will die. And so that's what makes life worth living. And so when you can learn to appreciate time, when you can walk in a field with bare feet, when it's safe to do so, guys, obviously don't do that in a dirty park.
Yeah.
You can feel the grass on your feet. If you can get outside the city and you can look up at the universe and you can see the Milky Way, you will see there is a symmetry in there that can only be explained by something far beyond our recognition. And you mentioned earlier about religion. Where I struggle with religion, Tony, is that I don't think words can define quite the glory of what we would use
Yes.
God. And I don't think God is a good enough word to define something that I feel here, I know is there. But human language is limited. And so therefore, what you can appreciate is your attention, your time, and your own limitations. Because in doing so, you realize that you are fallible. You realize that one day the end will come and all you have is right now. And so therefore, it's in those moments of joy, of pain, of discipline, of dedication, where the person is made. And so if nothing else from this, remember that your personality is forged by your actions, and all you really have is time. So make the most of it.
I love that. I love, man, man, you got me hyped up. um, I love it, man. You're absolutely right. And then now I get, it comes full circle. I get when you said that somebody paying attention to you in your time. This time, you're right. Absolutely. I always say, time is short, or life is short, which is, I'm saying the same thing. Your time is the most valuable thing. And we set like all these, nowadays we set all these constructs and machines, and we kind of think that's it, but that's not it. Our time and what we do with it is the most precious thing that we can do in life. And I agree. I like that, get out there when you can, get away from the chaos, get away from the machine, get away from your phone, get away from whatever it may be, and enjoy that time with your family, with your wife, whoever's special to you. Um, even if it's a dog, and a pet. Um, and I think that's the best we can do in life. And I think that's the real flex, if you want to call it. You see all these influencers, like you said earlier, I got this Lambo, I got that. But maybe that's a younger ideology. But time is definitely the most important thing we have. I agree.
Yeah, and I think that overall, that if we can change people's minds into understanding what they need, then they actually end up in charge. They're the ones with the power. Now, I do understand, and again, you mentioned earlier, Tony, you're not political. I'm not political either, but let's be honest. Inflation is something that pushes all the prices up around us. And inflation is
Yeah.
also it is a lien on our time. And so therefore, to protect yourself from that, if people can understand what they need, in the smallest sense and separate that from what they want, they will win this game. Because the only way that they can fool you, the devil fools you, back to that story, is they steal your attention and then they give you things you don't actually need. Now, this is the last example I'll give you guys,
Yeah.
but you know a crossroad. So a crossroad, and you've got the idea of a crossroad demon.
Yep.
Yeah. A
Hmm.
crossroad demon can never actually give you more than you can ever get. They can only give you what you can get anyway, but they take time. They always want a 5-year lien, a 10-year lien on your life, and then they have your eternal soul. Now, you might get the girl, you might get the car, you might get the big house, but there's a lien on you. And this story is going to this place basically is that we all have demons in every single one of us.
Yeah.
And those demons are often born of things we've been through, on the environment we live in, on things that we are external forces that work against us beyond our full comprehension, but they are always there, just niggling, quietly
Yep.
whispering. And in giving in to them, then it is the same as taking a lien on your life because you're not fully in control. But also, looking the demon in the eye and keeping it on a very tight leash means you maintain ownership. Because the thing is, as I said earlier, is that we are made of infinite potential, but we are infinitely capable of good and we are infinitely capable of bad.
Either one.
And I've never liked it when people said, I would never do that, or I would never do that, and judge people from 200 years ago on today's standards, because you don't know what you would do in the time. Like,
Absolutely.
how much pain have you seen in this world to know what you would do when your life or your kid's life is on the line? And I'm not trying to be negative. I'm saying that you don't ever want to find out, but what you can do is live a life right now of one where you don't make deals that you cannot cash, and don't take liens on your future with decisions today, unless the sacrifice would be that let's say that you wanted to your child to get out of where they were because it's a heavy gang neighborhood, okay?
Yep.
And to do that, you had to take a job you didn't like, but the ultimate goal was that meant you got near a school where there was less violence, where it was safer, and maybe there was a better hospital. And that took you 10 years of work. That is righteous work, because in the pain, in the misery, you are bringing everything up around you. But what would be unrighteous is to rob a bank, even if you weren't caught, to get out of that situation, because
Yeah.
that event, the piper pays the tune in the end. And so all of this, Tony, all this conversation comes around to is what can you what story do you want to write for yourself?
I
And
like
the
that.
message throughout this is, write the story of who you want to be and act in a way that the hero would act in a story.
I love that. It's almost, the saying, dress the part of who you want to be, and then you'll become that. I love that too. Just to kind of wrap it up here too, Arky. First of all, if you ever want to have a conversation again, let me know. I'll give you my number after the show. Man, I love talking to you. You've opened my mind to new possibilities. You've kind of helped me deal with some of the things that were blocking me a little bit, and you gave me a different perspective. And I hope everybody listening, you've done that, and I'm sure you have. Just to know, just like you said, you are in control of your life. Don't ever let anybody take that from you, because that's when you start to lose yourself and lose who you are. Um, just because you've been so positive for me, brother. Just let anybody know listening, like, do you have a website, or is there any way to get a hold of you? Something like that?
No, thanks. I don't like to plug myself. It's one of my weaknesses and I'm working on it. So, but I
Okay.
appreciate the opportunity. So, personality peak, PEEK. So think of it like, take a peek at your personality.
Uh-huh.
I've mapped an entire interface there over a long, long time, where you can select across 6 dimensions the exact percentage that you believe where you are right now. What it aims to do is it aims to hold a mirror at you, and the mirror is a snapshot in time. Remember that the mirror doesn't follow you around. You're not narcissists. It is a mirror.
Yeah.
You look, you walk away. The thing with it is, in doing so, it allows you to cast that light I mentioned earlier onto things that are strong, but also on things that you may or could do better. And all I want is, after you take that test, is to find something that you can improve by 1%. And if you find that, I've already won. And just to be clear, you don't even need to log in to get the initial results. Of course, I'd love you to log in. I'd love you to spend money with me. I'd love you to keep me going, but you don't have to. Those first results you can get completely free, and they are mapped across 64 archetypes. And the selections that you make, be honest with yourself. No one's looking. Be honest with yourself and drag it to where you believe you are at this time. And in doing so, from the feedback I've had so far, almost everyone has had massive value add. And all it will take is 3 to 5 minutes of your precious attention, but with the intent solely of the first intent is solely to give you a good insight. And then, of course, the second intent is, I may get a win, but if I win, you win. If you win, I win. It's as simple as that.
Your community, absolutely. I love it. What? So I can just put that down. What was that? That was a website again?
Yeah, personalitypeak, PEEK.com. And it's fundamentally an entire personality interface that I've developed myself. I wrote a model called the Archetypical Spectrum Model. And fundamentally, it is new maths, new backing, and a novel way of looking at personality. But I want people to be clear. I ain't some psychometric testing guy. This is for fun and for maximum 5 minutes of your attention. And in doing so, I'm pretty sure you will gain more than scrolling through whatever the hell for the next 2 hours.
Intention with intent, kind of.
Yep.
I like that. I was just putting it here. I'm definitely going to do this when I get done. I like it. I'm going to try that. Okay, everybody, that was Arky Jones. I want to thank you again, brother, for coming on, man. If you ever want to do this again, I'm good. Thank you guys. And everybody, thank you guys for listening. Appreciate you guys as always. I'm Tony as always. Have a good one. Stay blessed. Peace.